Hey guys, this is Justin at the Survival Review, and I've been taking a look at the movies that introduces us to the monsters that we'll be seeing in Godzilla, King of the Monsters. I've already talked about Rodan and Mothra, so it only leaves us with Ghidorah, the three-headed monster. Now that title might be deceiving, because it makes it sound like it's a standalone movie, and especially after me talking about the standalone Mothra and Rodan movies, but it's not. It's actually the fifth film in the Godzilla franchise. But the movie doesn't just have Godzilla and King Ghidorah, it actually ties in with the other two movies I talked about because it also has Mothra and Rodan in it. There's a lot of monsters in this movie. So this movie is a direct sequel to Mothra vs. Godzilla, and both these movies came out the same year. They both came out in 1964, and this movie actually has some plot connection to that, because in Mothra vs. Godzilla, there is another Mothra egg, and the main Mothra that we met in the standalone film ends up becoming very weak in the battle against Godzilla and dying, and out of the egg hatches two little Mothra larvae who fight off Godzilla and end up defeating him. So when we get to this movie, there's only one of them for some reason. Well, the other one mysteriously died off camera in between movies. I'm assuming it was just for like money reasons, like it would just be cheaper to have one Mothra larva fighting all the monsters instead of having to deal with another one, you know, added upon all the monsters that are in this movie. So there's that connection. There's also Hiroshi Koizumi reprising his role as a scientist from that movie. Not to be confused with the scientist he played in Mothra, which was a different character. So he's back, which is kind of a rare thing for these Godzilla films. You don't usually see a character returning in a sequel. So there are little connections to that follow off of that movie. You also have the twin fairies who are involved in the plot of this one, who are also involved in the last one. So this is a direct sequel, despite the main plot of the movie being its own thing and, you know, focusing on mostly totally different characters. And the plot of this film, okay. For a 90-minute movie that's about like four monsters fighting each other, there's a lot to unpack here. So the movie revolves around this police detective who gets this job to protect this princess who's making a visit to Japan because there's a lot of people after her, so there's a high chance someone's going to try to assassinate her, which pretty much does happen because her plane ends up exploding. But not before she looks out the window at this meteor shower that's going on and basically gets what it looks like almost hypnotized, and she ends up jumping out of the plane before it gets blown up. So then you have the meteor shower that caused this one giant meteor to crash in this crater, and you have this scientist and his crew going to investigate this meteor that keeps growing, has this weird magnetic pull to it, like all their equipment just starts getting pulled to it and everything. So they're investigating that when all of a sudden the princess shows up in the middle of town saying that she's from Venus and she's warning us of all this bad stuff that's going to happen. She starts making all these predictions, like there's something bad at this volcano, you don't want to go there, like something bad's going to come out of it. And what happens? Rodan gets resurrected from there, because that's the volcano where the Rodans died in the standalone film. So Rodan gets resurrected, starts wreaking havoc. Then she also predicts that this one ship that's about to go away is in grave danger, and then that ship ends up getting destroyed by Godzilla. So she starts making these predictions that seem to be coming true, but people still don't believe her because she's running around saying, "I'm from Venus." Even though it's a world where giant monsters are like a common thing, like there's scenes in this movie where people are just like mentioning like, oh yeah man, Rodan is, you know, destroying the sea. Like they're not as like shocked by it because this has happened before. Since there's kind of a continuity thread between these movies, it's not like the strongest continuity, but there is one there. They're still like, no, this person's from Venus, that's ridiculous, we can't believe that. And also you have this group of like investigators, and of course the main one happens to be the sister of the police detective, because she's also trying to find the princess so she can get the story from her and like help protect her and all that kind of stuff. And then you have the assassins who blew up the plane finding out that the princess is still alive, so they're going to Japan to try to assassinate her and take her out. And then you have that crater that's growing that eventually explodes and turns into Ghidorah, this new monster who's flying around destroying Japan. The princess reveals basically that thousands of years ago Ghidorah destroyed all the inhabitants of Venus. A few of them survived and moved to Earth and kind of mated with the humans, and this is one of the Venusians' consciousness inside the princess coming here to warn us about how terrible Ghidorah is the fact that he basically destroyed an entire planet, and now he's in Japan. So you have the twin fairies who are kind of visiting Japan for a little while, and you have the scientist from the last movie who's like, hey, you know, Mothra did a lot of good last time. She defeated Godzilla. Can we call Mothra to come help us out? So they do. They call Mothra to come help fight against Ghidorah. And it's Mothra's task to unite them so they can go fight Ghidorah together and defeat him. Okay, so that's the plot of this movie. There's a lot. For, like I said, a 90-minute movie that the main focus is 4 monsters fighting each other. There's a lot going on. And you know what? It's great. It's just some great 60s era Japanese sci-fi, you know, just craziness that is very entertaining. It's ridiculous, it's over the top, but it's fun. And when you get to all the stuff with the monsters, that stuff is fantastic. This is like prime Showa era Godzilla material here with the monsters. It's incredible. This movie does mark a turning point though in the Godzilla series, because this is the first film that ends up portraying Godzilla as a good guy. He's still like an evil monster. Like when he first comes ashore, he's wrecking Japan, you know, and everything. But when Mothra has to convince him to fight against Ghidorah, that kind of turns him to a good guy a little bit, and that kind of becomes what the next few movies end up being about with him. There to fight the even bigger and even worse giant monster that's attacking Japan, you know? And then we'll just morph into this hero character that the children cheer on in the later Showa films. So that's a major turning point. Not only that, like I mentioned in Mothra, how they were starting to gear him a little more towards kids. This one does that even more because Godzilla and Rodan are given personalities. They're given more human traits. They act a lot sillier. Prime example, of course, is the scene where Mothra is trying to convince Godzilla and Rodan to work together. And, you know, Godzilla's hilarious. Godzilla just looks like an annoyed teenager. She's like, Mothra's trying to convince him and tell him, like, to help fight, and he's just sitting there just like, nah, I'm not gonna do this. And I like his reasoning. It's just like, well, you know, the humans don't treat me well. Why should I protect them? And I'm like, wait, so is that actually what goes through Godzilla's mind? Like, now that got me really interested. Like, what's the psyche of Godzilla? What's going through his thoughts? I mean, it's ridiculous, but I find that, like, fun. And then there's a moment where Mothra has to break up the fight, so she's spraying Godzilla with these, like, webs, like, kind of like the cocoon stuff that she uses, and Rodan starts laughing at him. So then Mothra sprays Rodan with the webs, and Godzilla has a good laugh about it. So there's these just really silly human traits that they give the characters in this movie that definitely starts to lean the franchise towards kid stuff, you know? I mean, it is the 5th film in the series, so it's only fitting they've kind of changed it up a little bit at this point. You know, it's not just gonna be Godzilla running around destroying the city, it's gonna be him, you know, working together with the monsters to defeat bad guys. You know, that's fine, it's fun, it's entertaining. You know, it's just weird to think of, like, you know, the first film, which only came out 10 years earlier than this, and Godzilla is a symbol of nuclear destruction. And then you cut to this movie and he's a bit of a change, you know. Also, this movie is not too kind to Godzilla's crotch. Because there's 2 instances in this movie where he gets hit in the junk, and it's just ridiculous. And then you have the best one, during the fight between Godzilla and Rodan. Rodan picks up Godzilla, flies him over the town, and then drops him on this power line where he lands crotch first. Yeah, it's ridiculous. That being said, I do really like that first fight between Godzilla and Rodan. I thought that was a really fun fight. Some of the effects weren't as great, where it's kind of like the 2 puppets going at it, and that's where it kind of gets a little unintentionally funny, because you can clearly tell it's just 2 puppets going, like, attacking each other. But aside from that, I really like seeing Godzilla fight Rodan. That's something you don't actually see that often in this series, because after this movie they end up working together and stuff, so I liked seeing that. I thought that was a really fun action scene. And of course, the main event of the film, Ghidorah, King Ghidorah himself. One of the most badass and epic Godzilla villains, to the point where he became Godzilla's arch villain. You know, he's like the quintessential Godzilla opponent. And yeah, he's fantastic. He's just such a cool creature. Basically just, you know, a 3-headed dragon who flies around destroying cities with his, like, lasers they shoot out of their mouths and stuff. He's like a good combination of, like, Rodan and like a typical Godzilla type of monster. Whereas, like, King Ghidorah can still fly around like Rodan, but he can also land and go toe-to-toe with Godzilla. And I know there's moments in the film where Rodan is standing and not flying around, but that's not really when he attacks. Ghidorah attacks both when he's in the air and when he's on the ground. And he's a great character. He's just so memorable and so awesome. I mean, the fact that they basically, the first thing they say about him is that he basically destroyed all the inhabitants of Venus. Like, that's ridiculous. You know, though I will say one thing about him. Like, he is badass. Like, it literally takes 3 monsters to defeat him. You know, that's how badass he is. He has to take 3 monsters to take him down. That being said, though, the way he gets defeated in this movie is kind of weak. Because basically the monsters just overpower him, and then he flies away. And that's it. And it's like, oh, for, you know, a guy who's go on to become, like, the greatest Godzilla villain. Oh, that's a little underwhelming. But that moment aside, Ghidorah is awesome. In fact, all the other monsters are awesome. The fight scenes between them are fantastic. They're great. Seeing all these monsters interact together is a ton of fun. Seeing the monsters interact, there's like that moment where Mothra latches onto Godzilla's tail and just is like being whipped around, which is pretty crazy. There's also a moment where like Rodan is biting Godzilla's tail and like moving it around, and Godzilla's head is like moving around with it, like it's like attached to the tail. Like cool, fun little details like that that make the fight scenes really entertaining. Even though it's not the full form of Mothra, it's more of like the larva state of Mothra, you know? It's still great, you know, seeing these characters interact, and it's a lot of fun. It really helps get you ready for King of the Monsters, since this is the core group of monsters that will appear in that movie, you know? It's kind of like the true precursor to that. And it's fantastic. You know, even with the plot of the movie, which is ridiculous at times, there's like shootouts between, you know, our hero and the assassins, which is ridiculous. There's like stuff like that that's fun. I do like that acting-wise, Kenji Sahara appears in here, and Akihito Harada, marking those as the 2 main actors who's appeared in all 3 origin films for Mothra, Rodan, and King Ghidorah. Also, Kenji Sahara and Akihito Harada both appeared in the original 1954 Godzilla film. And of course, Ishiro Honda directing this one, which he of course directed Mothra and Rodan and Godzilla. So he's another one who's been involved in all of these films. It's crazy to see all the people who like, kept coming back for these movies. Overall though, that's Ghidorah the 3-headed monster. A great classic Godzilla film. A lot of great monster action. Like, you got a lot of monsters in this one. You know, like I said, you have 4 monsters. 4 out of the 5 main Toho monsters are the stars of this one. So that's kind of a huge deal. That's pretty cool. And seeing them fight is fun. The plot is ridiculous, but it's entertaining, you know? It's fun in its silliness, you know? It's very silly, but very entertaining. It just all comes together for a very fun and entertaining monster flick that, you know, if you like this stuff, you can't go wrong with it. So yeah, that's the introduction movies for Mothra, Rodan, and King Ghidorah. I can't wait to see what they do with them in King of the Monsters, and I can't wait to see that movie and talk about it. But that's about it for now. And until next time, I'll talk to you guys later.